Welcome to Accounting Life with Jotham Tai. Today's episode is Technology and the Modern Day Auditor. Our guest today is Katie Hanna, Solutions Consultant at Gappify. On this episode, we discuss how the audit industry has evolved in recent years, how attitudes towards technology have shifted, and why new technology adoption is empowering the next generation of accountants. Now, our host, Jotham Tai.
Hey, Katie, how's it going? Thanks for joining us on today's show.
Hey, Jotham. Doing good. How are you?
I am doing good and feeling excited to chat with our very own Katie today at Gappify about your thoughts on technology and what the modern day auditor looks like. So really excited to have you on.
Yeah, super excited to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to get into some cool topics today.
Well, and really the industry and everything around us is changing so fast these days. I know you began around like the 2017 time frame, and that's when you got into the audit industry. Just going back in time and seeing where everything is at today, how would you describe the evolution since the time you started audit?
Oh my gosh, it's crazy different. So it's so funny. When I first started at Deloitte as an audit intern, we were using a software that was created the same year I was born. So it was, it was something. It was not what I expected. You go through college, you're learning all these cool technologies, and then you get into this job and you're like, oh, I have to kind of go back to seventh, grade trying to figure out what this technology is even doing. But so that was 2017. Fast forward to, the past couple of years, we're now entirely cloud-based. We've totally adopted, completely new technologies. So I would say, at least at, Deloitte where I was at, the technology transformation has been just, crazy big since I started.
Well, and it makes me think about my timeline and the evolution and on the audit side. And, of course, I maybe have to go back a little bit more in terms of years than you, but when I first started, and I've shared this in other webinars and podcasts before, I remember my first audit engagement. You had this thing called a microfiche, and I don't even know if you've heard about that.
No, I don't think I have.
So you put this little film, it's like really like this size, and you put it in a machine and it projects like very small, like fine details. And that's where we saw like GL details. So when someone produce a drill down of a certain trial balance account, those microfiches should contain the hundreds of thousands of lines, and I forget what the actual procedure was just to write to check or tick mark. But I guess going back to your point, I think it's exciting, like the acceleration levels of technology in the audit industry has improved dramatically. And I'm guessing you are beyond like printing out paper and like stuffing paper in binders and having big carts, or you still have some of that?
I had a little bit of that. So at my first internship ever, which actually was in industry, I was very much paper-based. I bought a big pack of pens in all different colors. I had my ruler that I ticked and tied everything out in the footnotes. That was in industry. When I got to Deloitte, we were in PDFs. So instead of drawing with pens, I was drawing boxes in PDFs. So it was at least on the computer, but I definitely had friends. I remember my one friend, she told a story about how she was in charge of the tie-out, which was this giant binder full of the tie-out papers. And the day they filed, they all went out to a happy hour after, but she had her tie-out binder. And so she was just bringing this giant binder with all the tie-out to the happy hour. And she's like, it was the most stressful experience of life. So I'm like, what if something happens to this physical binder? Like, that's it. That's the work. So I didn't experience that, but it was definitely still around when I started.
Oh gosh, you had me at bringing tie-out binder to happy hour. And those words hopefully should never have to be repeated anywhere in the world. But it goes to show again, like how technology in some cases has improved, but in some areas, and I'm sure there are pockets within the accounting industry who still have these binders showing up at their happy hours. But nonetheless, I think I'm just and I'd like to get your general thoughts on this. I think there were points earlier in my career where I was frustrated about the pace of how technology was evolving within audit and accounting in general. But it sounds like the commitment is starting to improve there. And of course, it's not all the way there, but have you sensed any kind of shift in embracing like new technology since you joined the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there definitely has been, right? And I think it's for, a few different reasons, the way I see it. First of all, as, the industry evolves, people are actually realizing like, hey, we can leverage these technologies to make us a lot better at our jobs. Whereas I think maybe in the past, and maybe this was still remnants when I first started, technology, there was almost an adversarial relationship where it's like, oh God, we have to roll out this new thing again, and it's going to change in a year, and I just learn it, and it's a huge waste of time. And so people kind of saw it as, an afterthought, or like, why would we fix it if it's not broken? But I think really what I've seen changed is the attitudes towards technology, where I don't know if this is, an overall shift in our culture from a workplace perspective, or if it's something that, folks have been working hard to change on management side, but it's gone from being this adversarial, like, oh my God, this is such a chore, why can't we just do it, to, hey, I think this can really help us. Like, I think this can make our audits more efficient. I think this can help us work less hours and potentially have more effective results. So like the technology itself, yes, definitely has changed a lot, has evolved, but I think more than that, it's the attitudes towards technology, I think have really grown and evolved, which has allowed for that, consistent evolution.
I'd love to like double click one more time, and then I definitely have some other questions about your time at Deloitte that I want to get to. But your point there just kind of made me think about there may be something generational that is different, like with the industry now than, oh gosh, I'm like sounding like a dinosaur here now. My generation of accountants, and I don't know if it was actually the same, Katie, but I remember going through my CPA testing and exam, and just the schooling. And the principle of conservatism and consistency, that to us was translated as like, just do everything the same way, not just like, the methodology in calculating a certain transaction, but everything else as well, right? Like if you were doing something in a spreadsheet, as painful as it was, like do that spreadsheet over and over again, because it aligns with that principle of conservatism and consistency. But I think it's not the way it's taught now, hopefully in schools, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, conservatism is obviously still important, but I think it's more seen from a perspective of mitigating risk. It's not as much, we should be doing the same thing over and over again just to be conservative. We can't change it. It's more, hey, is by doing this same thing over and over again, are we actually opening ourselves up to more risk? So we're still having those same principles, but I think we're just viewing it differently now.
That, I mean, is really the right way of looking at it. There is a risk, especially so if the process and methodology is the same and the business transactions and environment is dynamically changing, you actually not changing is higher risk. So, gosh, we could do a whole episode on just that topic. It's a really good point that I don't think it's talked about a lot in, at least some of the content that I'm following. I do want to get back to your experience though, Katie, on your, specifically as it relates to adopting technology with Deloitte. Yeah. So I know you're involved with the cloud-based audit software implementation. Yeah. And I'm sure for some of our audience here, we'd love to just hear about some of the details, like what did it entail, what kind of challenges did you run into? Yeah, I'd love to hear about your experience there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, when we started, we were using this old kind of file storage software, essentially from, 1994. And then, so when I was, I think a second year senior, I don't even remember, we finally rolled out this new cloud-based audit platform that was going to be cloud document storage. It was going to be dynamic, allow for multiple folks to edit documents at the same time. It's going to be a huge game changer. Now, by the time they rolled it out to my team, which we were one of the larger enterprise teams, they've been talking about this pretty much since I started. So everybody had known that it was coming for a really long time, but nobody really quite knew what it was. So I say all that just to preface, there was a lot of buildup towards what this was. And people were scared because this had really been hyped up. This had been, projected and kind of taught to people it's going to be this huge thing. It's going to be a game changer. And like to your point earlier on conservatism, people were scared. Change is scary. We want to be conservative. We like the way we used to do things. So I think the first kind of roadblock I met was really kind of hoping to change people's mentalities on what this new software was going to be, and like really help to illustrate to people why this was actually going to be better than what we were doing before. So in order to do that, and I will say I didn't come up with all this myself. Deloitte had a really extensive training program on all of this stuff. But I was like our champion on my team. And so I kind of hosted a lot of the trainings with folks. And so like, I'll say about 70% of my effort was just educating the team on number one, where they could find resources. And number two, getting them excited about it and getting them, really amped to use this. The other 30% that I won't get into is, the actual data work and the day-to-day of like, oh shoot, this document didn't transfer over correctly, or how are we going to do this really complex thing that we used to do in Excel in a structured data form now? So that had its own unique challenges, but that's just every implementation, So I think really getting the team psyched about it and making it a full team effort and giving people incentives to participate was probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, what's interesting is you and I being numbers-based people, as was, I'm sure, the folks that you had to work with throughout that implementation. It's interesting to me, and well, not so interesting. It's just, I think, the reality of like human nature. The most important factor to me, at least in my opinion, and maybe you can expand or weigh in on this. It is that buy-in. It is getting people excited about the change that they're being asked to be made, because you can't just like put together a spreadsheet and say, get very scientific about the number of hours saved, and get really prescriptive about ROI calculations. A lot of times, like getting people to welcome change requires kind of like an emotional like push towards that direction, which is generating enough excitement to try new things. So, did you see that play out, or do you have any perspectives on kind of that like non-scientific, non-mathematical point that I just made?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of to your point, you have to have both, right? Because you're going to have certain people who are very, very numbers based, and they're just going to want to see the spreadsheet, and they're going to be like, okay, fine. I would say I saw that more kind of at the partner level, where the partners were like hesitant, but they're like, all right, I see how this is going to help. But where we really just needed that morale was at the manager, senior staff level. And what we did was we just made it like a really open and accepting environment to take in questions, to hear concerns. If people were worried about something in the platform, rather than kind of brushing it away and saying, no, it's going to be fine, we tried really to address those concerns and say, hey, I understand where you're coming from. Let's work through this together and see how we can get you comfortable using the platform instead of just throwing, 100 different user guides at them. And in my position as kind of a leader on the team at the time, I think it was really crucial for someone like me to be leading this charge, because if maybe someone a little higher than me or even lower than me had tried to do this, higher than me, it's going to be brushed over. Maybe they're not going to have the same connections with the team that I did. Lower than me, people aren't going to listen to them. So it really was kind of the sweet spot of, understanding the team dynamic and having someone in the right position to be able to hear and address those concerns and, give people what they needed to get them comfortable with the tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was really, you can talk about like a broader like methodology within like technology adoption that I think is, again, critical for success. And it sounds like you've been thoughtful about the different points within that have been very beneficial in your process. And just zooming out now, Katie, just thinking about the transformative nature of new technology. Obviously there's improvements from a process that is one of the biggest benefits of adopting technology. But similar to some of the themes that we've talked about, employee empowerment is also something that can benefit from transformational technology changes. So I'd love to get your maybe personal like experiences and any kind of examples where you've seen that in your own career. Would love to just get more examples from your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from an employee empowerment perspective, one thing that I think is really cool is it does allow those folks who are maybe at the lower staff, senior levels, to be able to actually make an impact on the audit and on the project by bringing to the team maybe new tools that the firm's rolling out that aren't this big cloud-based software. Obviously, the entire audit platform, that was a huge thing, very structured, large project. But the firm, when I was there, was always rolling out new tools, always rolling out incremental tools. And so from an employee empowerment perspective, one thing that I thought was really cool is my staff could come to me. Maybe, they had been there for 8 months, a year, and they could say, hey, Katie, it's on an email. They rolled out this new disclosure analytics tool. Should we be using this in some of our things? And I'd be like, my God, I got 8,000 emails yesterday. I didn't see that one. Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. We end up using the tool, and then, it helps us to make the audit more efficient. That staff feels empowered to the fact that they actually brought something that, sparked a process change. So I think it's really great in just empowering folks to be able to make those changes without requiring years and years of experience and, higher level methodology type changes. Now it's just these small little things that make people feel heard, and really can also have a large impact on the project.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing better than getting the employees that are frustrated with an existing process actually being a force in making the changes that they need to improve their lives. So it doesn't get any more empowering than that. And one story, I don't know if I've shared this with you with our team recently, but I know I've maybe done a few spots over the years with other webinars and podcasts. But it reminds me of a time when I was managing a GL team and AP team, and actually Treasury, Payroll, and a couple others. One of them was AP, and we had a senior AP specialist who was very keen on wanting to understand how to book debits and credits and be more GL and JE oriented. My comment to him was, well, you're so busy processing 300 manual expense reports per month. We can't find enough time for you to learn and get education and instruction on how to book accrual journal entries. So that made me feel really bad. And what we ended up doing was, asking him to lead the way in terms of, in this case, implementing Coupa. Coupa we used for expense reimbursement. So for him, that was an empowering experience, right? He had stacks and mounds of expense reports that were standing in the way between him and being able to learn journal entries. And then systems is, really not only the empowering catalyst for engagement, but in his case, the ability and the bridge to learn a new skill. And so, speaking of skills, Katie, as we wrap up today's podcast, now that you're out of audit, you have a new career here with us at Gappify. Like, what systems, technologies, or skills did you develop at the Big Four that you have found now to be useful in your new journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest thing that I got from a technology perspective is an understanding of systems landscapes and how all of the different systems at companies work together, how they talk or don't talk, and really how, business processes as a whole can't work without the supporting technologies. I feel like, when I first started and maybe when I was a little younger, I had a kind of mishmash understanding of okay, this is an ERP, this is what it does, this is maybe like a processing system, but I didn't understand how they all work together. And by doing these large audits of, these big enterprise companies, what I learned is that it's just a real ecosystem. And if one thing goes wrong in that ecosystem, it can be a real disaster. And it helped me just kind of get a feel for the complexities that can come with a technology landscape. But on the flip side, it helped me understand that it all is understandable. It all is something that you can figure out if you devote the time to learning and, getting more education on how these systems work together and, what they do support. It really just helps with that critical thinking and, how the big picture works, rather than being kind of stuck in, okay, this is this system and it does that and that, but rather how does all of this work together to come together to produce, ultimately a set of financial statements or an annual report. So definitely was cool to get that bigger picture understanding.
Yeah. And Katie, again, I think you've at this point identified 4 or 5 subtopics that we get to expand upon with other podcasts. But I think one in particular is also one of those points that I don't think are talked about enough, which is the ties that happen throughout the ecosystem. I know there's a natural tendency to look at each of these solutions as just isolated and in their own silos, but especially, and maybe this is because of my SOX background and also starting off on the audit side. Audit side was always top down, right? Start with your balance sheet, P&L, and then voucher transactions and work your way down. But SOX kind of takes it from the bottoms up, right? How does something start from Salesforce, make its way through that suite sales order to billing to rev rec all the way to the footnotes. And when you think about the systems and how everything connects with each other, it's really beautiful, first of all. And that's probably one of the geekiest things I'll see on a Monday morning. But there is it's pretty cool to know that it connects in the way that it does. And something that is done incorrectly or not tied correctly on the front end of the order to cash cycle has very direct implications and consequences to the downstream. Gosh, Katie, that's another light bulb moment.
What can I say? I'm just here to give ideas.
Well, I guess as you wrap up, Katie, I know we've gone very deep into accounting technology itself, but just as a fun way to wrap up, what are some other cool technologies that you're playing around with outside of accounting?
Outside of accounting. So actually, I've gotten a little bit into design recently, just not too much, but one thing I've been trying to do is get into some of the space planning apps where you can plan out the space in your room. I hate how my bedroom is laid out, and I can't be out there just rearranging furniture all day. So I've been trying to get a little bit more into those type of apps. And it's nice because I don't have a background in any sort of interior design, architecture, anything. But some of these apps, and I've been playing with a few different free ones, they make it really easy for someone like me to go in and, virtually rearrange my furniture. So I think it's great. I could just sit on my couch and rearrange my bedroom all day. It's wonderful.
Well, and you know what is beautiful, and this is a cheesy way to wrap up, and I think it connects to the overall podcast very well, because technology allows us accountants and auditors to not have to work 80 hours a week. Then Katie gets to try new design technologies, and technology is such an additive value in many different ways, and not only careers, but it trickles down to life. So glad to hear about your design aspirations now. And that's the way careers and life should be. We should have aspirations to try different things in life. And I think technology has a huge part in allowing us to do just that.
Absolutely. No, it definitely does.
Well, Katie, thanks for joining us on today's episode. Again, it sounds like we have several more topics to tackle, and hopefully we can get you back here for another episode to chip away at that list that, putting in the span of 20 minutes here.
No, for sure. I'll be back whenever you'd like to have me. Thank you so much, Jotham. This has been great. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for joining, Katie.
Thanks for stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want more information, please check us out at Gappify.com, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.